a crowded public gym, a janitor humiliated, a bully with a black belt craving dominance. One quiet man steps in not to fight, not to show off, but to protect dignity. The bully laughs, challenges him, and gathers an audience. What no one knows is that silence can be trained. Honor can be lethal. And some men don't need to prove who they are, because they already survived hell. Before we begin, pause for a moment and tell us, where are you watching from today? A city, a village, a base, a quiet room late at night? Drop it in the comments. And if you believe stories of quiet strength, hidden sacrifice, and real honor deserve to be told, please subscribe. These stories aren't about superheroes. They're about the ones who never asked to be seen. Now let's begin. The mop handle cracked against the tile, skidding across the gym floor like something fragile and unwanted. The janitor froze. So did everyone else. A circle of bodies had already formed, not intentionally, but instinctively. People always stepped back when dominance announced itself. Shoes squeaked softly as weight shifted. Someone laughed, quick and nervous, then swallowed it. No one spoke. At the center stood the man with the black belt. Thick through the shoulders, forearms veined and proud. The fabric of his G-jacket tied loosely around his waist, as if he wanted everyone to know he had just come from training. His eyes flicked down at the janitor with theatrical disappointment, the kind that enjoyed being witnessed. "Watch where you swing that thing," he said calmly, though his tone carried a blade. "Some of us are trying to train." The janitor bent slowly, knees aching, spine curved with years of apology, and reached for the mop. His hands trembled, not from fear alone, but from the humiliation of being old, visible, and powerless all at once. The smell of disinfectant clung to his clothes, sharp and clinical, as if even the air around him announced his role. "I'm sorry," the janitor murmured. His voice barely carried past his chest. "I'll clean it again." The black belt tilted his head, amused. "Again," he echoed, smiling. "You already did a bad job the first time." A few people looked away. Others pretended to stretch. Silence settled heavy, thick as dust. That was when the quiet man stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't touch anyone. He didn't even look angry. He simply placed himself between the bully and the janitor, calm, still, like a wall that hadn't realized it was about to be tested. "You don't need to speak to him like that," the man said. The sentence landed softly, and somehow harder than a shout. The black belt's smile widened. "Oh," he said, eyes scanning the man in front of him. Plain hoodie, worn sneakers, no gym bag, no visible muscle pump, no performance. "And who are you supposed to be?" The man didn't answer immediately. He glanced down at the janitor, nodded once, reassuring without words. Then he looked back up. Someone who knows respect isn't earned by humiliation. A ripple moved through the onlookers. Small, electric. The black belt laughed, loud this time. "You defending the help now?" he said. "That's cute. But you just stepped into something you don't understand." The quiet man held his ground. What no one could see was that his heart rate hadn't changed at all. His name was Ethan Cole. Most people saw a man in his late 30s who looked ordinary. Average height, broad but not bulky. The kind of posture that came not from vanity, but from habit, shoulders back, chin level, eyes always measuring space. What they didn't see were the small details that never announced themselves. The faint scars along his knuckles. The way his gaze never flickered. The way he positioned his feet, not squared in aggression, not angled in retreat, but balanced. Ready. Ethan hadn't come to the gym to train. He had come because routine kept the noise away. Ever since the desert, silence had become something he respected. Not feared, not avoided, honored. The janitor's apology had cut through him sharper than the bully's voice. Because Ethan had heard that tone before. He had heard it in villages after night raids, when elders bowed their heads to men with guns and no patience. He had heard it in refugee camps, where dignity survived only in whispers. He had heard it in the final words of a teammate bleeding into the sand, apologizing for dying. And something in him had moved, quietly, decisively, before his mind could intervene. Ethan Cole had spent 12 years in the Navy SEALs. 12 years of early mornings where the air smelled like salt and fuel. 12 years of boots scraping decks, weapons cleaned until they gleamed, and silence before missions that felt heavier than any prayer. 12 years of learning that the loudest men rarely survived long. He had learned to move without urgency, because urgency got people killed. He had learned to listen to the spaces between sounds, The pause in breathing, the wrong rhythm of footsteps, the weight of a stare. He had learned that real strength never rushed to announce itself. His last deployment had ended 3 years ago. A compound, a narrow hallway, a door that should have opened. It hadn't. 2 men didn't come home. Ethan did. He still smelled the dust sometimes when he closed his eyes, felt the grit between his teeth. Heard the silence after the gunfire stopped, a silence so complete it rang. Civilian life hadn't welcomed him with fireworks. It had offered grocery aisles, small talk, and people who mistook calm for weakness. He didn't correct them. He worked a quiet job. He trained alone. He carried his losses like folded flags inside his chest, never displayed, never forgotten. And he had promised himself one thing when he left the teams. If he ever saw power used to humiliate the powerless, he wouldn't look away. The black belt took a step closer. Up close. The difference in size seemed obvious to everyone watching. The bully filled space deliberately, chest rising, shoulders rolling as if warming up for a performance. His reputation preceded him, local competitions, social media clips, students who worshipped him. Last chance, he said, lowering his voice. Apologize for stepping in. Walk away. Ethan didn't move. Behind him the janitor stood frozen, mop clutched like a lifeline. His eyes darted between the 2 men, fear tightening his chest. He wanted to disappear. People like him always did. A woman near the water fountain bit her lip. A teenager subtly lifted his phone, then hesitated. A trainer crossed his arms, conflicted but silent. Public injustice thrives on one thing: witnesses who don't intervene. The black belt noticed the crowd and smiled again. See, he said. No one's on your side. Ethan's voice was calm when he answered. Silence doesn't mean agreement. The bully scoffed. You think you're special because you feel sorry for him. Ethan shook his head once. I think you're confusing fear with respect. Something hardened in the black belt's eyes. You're challenging me, he said. Ethan didn't deny it. He simply replied, I'm protecting him. That was when the challenge became inevitable. As the tension thickened, Ethan reached casually into the pocket of his hoodie, not for a weapon, not for intimidation, but to adjust something small, metal, and worn. A ring, simple, unmarked, except for the faint engraving inside: names, dates, coordinates. The black belt didn't notice, but an older man sitting on a bench did. His eyes narrowed slightly, recognition flickering like a ghost of memory. He said nothing, but his posture changed. Some stories don't announce themselves, they wait. Ethan spoke once more, quietly enough that only those closest could hear. Strength isn't what you do when people are watching, he said. It's what you refuse to do when they are. The black belt laughed and stepped forward. The line had been crossed. The space between them shrank to less than an arm's length. The black belt rolled his neck once, slow and deliberate, like a predator stretching before a meal. He wanted the moment. He wanted the eyes. He wanted the story to end with him standing tall while another man learned his place. You still have time, he said, voice low, almost generous. People like you usually do. Ethan didn't blink. Around them, the gym felt smaller. The air carried the sharp tang of sweat and rubber mats, mixed with the sterile bite of cleaning solution that clung to the janitor's clothes. Time slowed, not dramatically, not theatrically, but in the way it always did before something irreversible. The black belt lifted his chin toward the janitor. Tell your hero to step back, he said, before he embarrasses himself. The janitor opened his mouth, panic tightening his throat. His instinct was to comply, to smooth the moment, to absorb the humiliation like he had absorbed so many others over the years. But Ethan spoke first. He doesn't need to say anything, Ethan said. This isn't his shame. That sentence landed differently. The black belt's smile faded. You don't get it, he said. I've trained my whole life. Discipline. Control. I earned respect. Ethan studied him, not with contempt, not with challenge, but with a calm that felt almost sad. Then why do you need an audience? He asked. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Subtle, restrained, but real. The black belt's jaw tightened. You're real confident for someone with no belt. He said. No uniform. No credentials. Ethan nodded slightly. Credentials fade, he replied. Character doesn't. The insult landed without being spoken aloud. Someone finally spoke up, not loudly, but enough to break the spell. Hey man, a trainer said uncertainly. Let's just cool it down. The black belt shot him a look sharp enough to cut glass. This doesn't concern you. The trainer hesitated, then fell silent. That was when Ethan understood something important. This wasn't just about the janitor anymore. This was about what people allowed when they thought no one powerful was watching. The black belt took another step forward. Close enough now that Ethan could smell his cologne, sharp and expensive, masking the sour note of ego beneath it. You think standing there makes you brave, the bully whispered. Or stupid. Ethan's eyes never left his. Bravery isn't loud, he said. And stupidity announces itself. A few people gasped softly. The black belt exhaled through his nose, smiling again, but this time the smile was thin. All right, he said. You want to play protector? Then let's see how well you protect yourself. He raised his voice, just enough for everyone to hear. He announced. No excuses. If I win, you apologize, publicly, and you walk out. A pause. And if you win? Someone asked quietly. The black belt laughed. There's no if. All eyes turned to Ethan. This was the moment they expected him to retreat. To explain. To de-escalate. He didn't. He glanced back at the janitor one last time. You didn't do anything wrong, Ethan said gently. Then he faced the black belt again. I won't fight you, he said. The bully scoffed. Of course you won't, Ethan continued, voice even. But if you touch him again, he said, I will stop you. The words were simple. The meaning behind them was not. The black belt's hand moved, fast, impulsive, grabbing the mop handle from the janitor's grip and tossing it aside. The clatter echoed across the floor, sharp and final. Gasps. Someone swore under their breath. The janitor flinched as if struck. That was enough. Ethan stepped forward, not aggressively, not hurriedly, but with purpose. The kind of movement that came from thousands of repetitions, from muscle memory forged under pressure where mistakes cost lives. Back away, Ethan said. The black belt laughed again, but there was a flicker now. Something uncertain. You don't give orders here. Ethan tilted his head slightly. No, he said. I give warnings. For the first time the black belt hesitated. He had expected shouting. Threats. Rage. What he hadn't expected was a man who looked at him like a problem already solved. The older man on the bench stood up. Slowly. He didn't say anything at first, just watched Ethan with a focus that had nothing to do with the gym. His eyes drifted to the ring on Ethan's hand, to the way he stood, to the stillness. Recognition settled in his chest like a weight. He had seen that stillness before. Years ago, on a dusty tarmac. On men who didn't posture because they didn't need to. The black belt noticed the shift in the room. The way the crowd's energy leaned, not toward excitement, but anticipation. You all really think this guy's something special, he scoffed, gesturing at Ethan. Look at him, he's nobody. Ethan spoke softly, but the words carried. Nobody, he said, is exactly who I learned to be. The sentence hung there. The black belt lunged, not with technique, not with discipline, but with ego-driving momentum. And in that instant something changed. Ethan didn't strike. He redirected. A subtle movement of the wrist, a shift of weight. The kind of motion so efficient it almost looked like nothing at all. The black belt stumbled, just a half step, but it was enough. Enough for the room to go silent. Enough for doubt to creep in. Enough for everyone watching to realize this wasn't going the way they expected. Ethan's voice was steady, almost regretful. You're strong, he said, but strength without control is just noise. The black belt pulled back, breathing harder now. His confidence wavered, just slightly. But the damage was done. For the first time, he understood something terrifying. This man wasn't afraid of him. The manager finally arrived, flustered and sweating. What's going on here? He demanded. The black belt opened his mouth, ready to dominate the narrative. But the older man from the bench spoke first. You might want to be careful, he said quietly. About how you handle this. The manager frowned. Why? The man nodded toward Ethan. Because some people, he said, carry more history than you can see. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. He had hoped it wouldn't come to this. But some lessons insist on being taught. The room was still. The only sound was the sharp intake of breath from those who had watched too long, hoping for chaos. Ethan opened his eyes. The crowd now leaned in unconsciously, waiting not for a fight, but for revelation. The older man from the bench stepped closer. Navy SEAL, he said softly, just enough for those near him to hear. The words hung like a shadow. The black belt froze mid-step. He looked at Ethan again. Really looked, and for the first time, the ordinary man before him became anything but ordinary. Ethan didn't need to lift a finger to prove it. His presence, his stillness, and the subtle way he carried the weight of his experiences spoke louder than any gym certificate, belt, or social media clip ever could. The black belt's bravado cracked. His stance faltered. Pride met the immovable wall of dignity he had underestimated. "You're a SEAL?" he stammered. Disbelief heavy in his voice, Ethan inclined his head quietly. "No boast, no spectacle, just acknowledgement." "I was just protecting someone who couldn't protect himself," he said. The black belt's laughter died in his throat. The room shifted. Eyes darted nervously. For once, silence carried more weight than aggression. The janitor exhaled, a sound that had been held tight in his chest for years. Relief washed over him in waves as the man who had silently defended him returned to the quiet he had always known. The black belt stepped back. His fists loosened, not out of fear alone but understanding. For once he saw the line between strength and honor. His dominance, cultivated for years, was meaningless against a man who had lived every day of his life under far more extreme pressures. You don't fight to prove anything," he said, voice small. "Oh, you fight to protect." Ethan only nodded. No celebration, no applause, just the calm weight of integrity. One by one, the onlookers began to react. A trainer extended a hand to the janitor. A few gym members murmured apologies to both men. A teenager who had lifted his phone to record slowly lowered it, realizing no footage could capture the gravity of what had just occurred. The black belt, once the center of attention, was now just another man, humbled by the silent presence of someone who carried unseen battles every day. Ethan turned once to the black belt, soft but unshakable. "True strength isn't measured in fear or force. It's measured in what you refuse to let happen to others. Power isn't what you display, it's what you control." Later, addressing the crowd in his quiet, deliberate voice, Sometimes the most dangerous weapon is silence. And sometimes, that silence saves lives." Each line struck deeper than any punch ever could, lingering in the minds of those who had witnessed it. The gym, once filled with tension and intimidation, softened. People began clapping, not in celebration of violence, but in recognition of courage. The black belt, now subdued, nodded toward Ethan in acknowledgement. The janitor smiled timidly, tears pricking his eyes. The crowd stood, some silently, some quietly cheering. Ethan stepped back, giving the janitor space. He placed a hand lightly on the older man's shoulder. A silent nod exchanged between two who recognized shared experiences in shadows no one else could see. No one argued. No one challenged. Respect, unspoken but unmistakable, had been restored. As the gym emptied, Ethan lingered for a moment. He wiped his hands on a towel, his movements methodical. His eyes carried the weight of memories the world would never see, of friends lost, of missions survived, of battles fought quietly. He didn't need applause. He didn't need recognition. All he required was that dignity, the janitor's, and the room's, remained intact. And in that quiet moment, the lesson hung in the air: true courage isn't loud. True honor isn't displayed. And true strength doesn't ask for validation. Wherever you are watching today, whether it's a small apartment, a crowded living room, or a late-night office, pause and reflect. Some battles are silent. Some heroes never make the news. Some victories are felt, not broadcast. If this story inspired you, leave a comment, tell us where you're watching from, and share what courage and honor mean to you. And subscribe, because these stories deserve to be told.